Business athletes, welcome back for yet another episode. I hope you've been doing well, and today's episode is one that hits close to home for myself, and I have a feeling this is going to resonate with many of you. And the topic of today's discussion: why highly sensitive people burn out and how to fix it. Highly sensitive people, why you feel everything. I paused there just for a second because I thought to myself, man, this has been such a journey for me. It's been such a journey in my life. And I will be the first to tell you that as an empath, and I'm going to define what a highly sensitive person is to start with. By the way, if you don't know what that is, don't be so naive to just turn this off thinking, I'm not an empath. I'm not a highly sensitive person, because I'm telling you now, very often if you have ADHD or different types of mental health issues, or you're entrepreneurial, or even if you don't feel like you are, there will be people that you know, maybe even one of your children or your spouse. So this is going to be useful for you to help sort of understand the mechanisms of action around how someone functions. And the ROI of this conversation is the fact that when I didn't really understand what an HSP was, and I'm not one that's huge on labels, I'll tell you that right away. I'm not a fan of labels. I've never really subscribed to them. So when I was diagnosed with bipolar depression and severe social anxiety and ADHD many, many years ago, I almost didn't want to adopt those labels, because I was like, you know what? That's just a condition that someone might be in based on the current set of circumstances in their life. I'm not subscribing to that crap. I'm going to be different. And so even with this whole HSP thing, don't think of it as some sort of pigeonholed label. Don't think of it as a disability. Think of it like an understanding of how you operate that will allow you to perform at a higher level. Once you understand how this essentially works. So an HSP is someone that is typically hypersensitive to stimulus. So rather than trying to, give you all this science-based data around, I'll tell you just what it feels like. So for me personally, I tend to be quite sensitive to bright interior lighting. So interior lighting, if it's really bright, and especially if it's blue light, I don't, and by blue light I mean that white light. So I often find that bright interior lighting, or if the screen on the computer or your phone is cranked up really bright, or people use white backgrounds on their computers rather than a dark background. I'm kept in dark mode. So if you don't really care, that's the difference where I function. I hate the white backgrounds. It's so physiologically straining on my eyes. And often I find people that are HSPs, they tend to wear sunglasses more, which is why I'm such a big advocate of take your sunglasses off when you're outside in the light, even a little bit, because I used to wear them all the time. And I realized it actually creates more of a hypersensitivity, and you're not obviously getting all the benefits of the sunlight coming through your eyes into your photoreceptors for vitamin D synthesis. But the other part of it is you're prone to loud noise. So you don't mind music, especially if it's music you enjoy, but loud people, loud noises, you wake up easily from noise, so you typically don't sleep very deep, and you wake up with little noises, and in general, just loudness. So for me, for example, one of the biggest challenges in my life as a parent has been navigating how loud children can be. Because obviously we all know kids are typically pretty loud. And it's interesting because at a certain age, it's almost like a stream of consciousness just comes out of their mouth. It's like with an adult, we have thought processes and we think about things that we don't verbally articulate. I feel like with children, it's almost like the only way they can think about something is they literally have to say it. So with our daughter, for example, it's like a never-ending stream of verbal diarrhea. And I find, like, even if I'm being honest, that I find at times can be quite challenging. It can. So those are two things. Now, another thing is even the way that clothing fits. You have a sensitivity to the way clothing fits. And so you don't like things that feel too tight. I hate wearing jeans, for example. I like the way jeans look. I like the way a lot of clothes look, but I hate the way they feel. And so for me, I've learned how to minimize and simplify my wardrobe. And quite frankly, part of it is like a time leverage strategy. I have a set of black t-shirts. I have a set of the same tank tops that are in different colors. I typically have similar types of tracksuit pants that I wear. I have similar things that are different colors or the same color, and I literally just cycle through them. I have all the same types of socks. I have all the same types of bamboo underwear. Like, everything is repetitive. Because once I find something that I like, I will get more of it, and I will use that more. So part of it, obviously, is, I think, a time efficiency thing. Like, if you're going into your wardrobe and you're farting around about what to wear and you're taking 10 minutes, that to me is not very efficient long term, especially if you really want to be conscious with your time and achieve a lot in your life. So that's one thing. But I think another part of it is general comfort. And I've noticed with our daughter Zia, for example, she is very much like this. At times, as a parent with a HSP child, they can be quite challenging to get dressed. So they don't like the way certain socks feel, or they don't like the way certain shoes feel, or they don't like the way certain pants feel. And you end up going through like a wardrobe change 3 or 4 times before you get out of the house. Now, as you learn these things more, you get better at navigating them. Early on, it can feel more overwhelming. It gets easier. And I'm going to share with you a lot of strategies around highly sensitive children, because obviously that relates to my life, and highly sensitive people as it relates to me, but also from a business enhancing performance standpoint. And I'm telling you this because if you can understand the principles and the concepts I'm going to share with you in this episode, it's going to make you a weapon. Your energy, your productivity, your output, your tenacity is going to be so high that you will be able to achieve almost anything. And I genuinely mean that. A couple of other things that I find with HSPs is they tend to burn out quite a lot if they don't have good strategies. So they don't have good strategies, they burn out frequently, they sometimes might get sort of insomnia or sleep issues. They typically will have digestive issues, and or their digestion is quite sensitive to things. Sometimes their skin is sensitive, so they're more prone to getting eczema or psoriasis or breaking out with a little bit of acne. So their skin is sensitive to different physiological things in the environment, including diet. Beyond that, I would say a lot of them can fall into the camp of OCD, overthinking, sort of manic thinking, OCD, ADHD, anxiety, and that sort of anxiety-prone thinking is a part of what I see. And obviously, as you can imagine, that ties into a lot of behavioral issues with children and even as adults. You know, so many adults think they have ADHD, or they have these learning disabilities, or they can't concentrate and they get brain fog. And I'm here to tell you that the things I've discovered and practiced and unearthed help with all of that. It helps with all of that stuff. So I just wanted to kind of frame that up first. And by the way, if you're interested in this topic more beyond just this episode, get the book Highly Sensitive People, and then there's a follow-up book, Highly Sensitive Children. So get those books. I think that it's worth understanding these things. I think that you don't have to subscribe to the label and like live into it. But if you can understand the mechanisms of action, you can change your life. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that you're not necessarily an introvert. You can turn on the extroversion. I can be very charismatic and very extroverted if I turn it on, but it requires a lot of like mental RAM. So I can do it, but it's very draining. And so what I find is that I don't do well with long days where I'm around a lot of people over an extended period of time. So I do well being in an environment with people, say, for a couple of hours, and then I go back to like my sort of quiet isolated environment to reset my nervous system. I've had to learn how to do this when I go to mastermind events and like events where I'm with teams. So say, for example, when I've gone to mastermind events where I'm speaking and stuff, I will often go back up to my room at lunchtime and I'll have my own lunch by myself and I'll reset my system. And there'll be times where I'll duck off, go back to my room, I'll grab a drink. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just doing like little bursts of breath work and just calming down the arousal of my nervous system. And I've found that initially it might feel like an inconvenience doing something like that, but you can do it pretty quick. Like you can do it in 5 minutes, and it turns you into this really charismatic, high energy, present, locked in person. Like to me, the ROI of just these little bits of awareness is massive. Rather than you just pushing yourself and sticking it out, and then by 1 p.m. you're totally fried. Your nervous system's vaporized. You feel exhausted. You feel irritable. You feel anxious. And all of the downstream effects that come with that. And then typically what happens is when you push yourself for like that for too long, you will end up getting sick. So I find HSPs tend to get sick more often if they don't have these things locked in. And to a greater extent, they'll get other types of issues. So autoimmune diseases and cancers. You are more prone to these things because your immune system is delicate. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're soft, but it means that it's almost like a high performance engine, and the parts of the engine are quite delicate. So think about like if you were going to compare like a Formula One race car versus like an old Ford Bronco or something. The old Ford Bronco's going along and it's probably clocked up hundreds of thousands of miles and the engine just keeps going and you can take it off road and you can be really rough with it. Most people are like a Ford Bronco. Like in some capacity, there is a use case and a function for that. And think of yourself as almost like a high-performance IndyCar engine where your ability to create lap speeds and perform is just astronomical. But you have to know how to fine-tune that engine more proficiently. And once you learn how to fine-tune the engine, you can be pretty durable as well. Like there is a level of durability that you will have. So obviously, when you're thinking about, is it worth listening to this conversation as am I HSP? I would say this conversation is going to help you not get sick as often. It's going to help you avoid burnout. It's going to help you enhance your cognitive output, cognitive horsepower, and not get as much mental fog. And it's going to give you a better bandwidth and capacity for your children and your family and your workload that you're under with your job and your profession. So how does that sound? This has been, I would say, the biggest unearthing and realization that I've had in my life in terms of me understanding these drivers. So let's jump into this. Now, in terms of HSPs, I would say in general, you've got to think about people like myself, and in many cases, maybe like you. You have a high level of emotional intelligence, or you have a high potential for it. You feel emotions more deeply. In many ways, if you're not careful, you can be like an energetic charcoal filter. Meaning like you can feel, when you go into a room, you can feel people's energy. You can feel the energy of a room. You can feel the people's energy without them even saying anything. So you're very, very intuitive and you're very perceptive. Like you have a high level of perception. When I'm around people, without them even talking, I can feel their intention. I can feel their energy. Now, the challenging thing with a lot of HSPs is that we don't learn how to feel, have that sort of water off a duck's back. So you might feel the anxiety or feel the stress or feel the sadness or the anger of someone. And rather than you just seeing and kind of realizing that's their energy, that's theirs to deal with, and you don't absorb it, you often will absorb these things. So you're more of an empath. So you can end up feeling the people's stress. You can feel their anger. You can feel their frustration. And that's what drives a lot of the chronic long-term health problems that HSPs get. So if you're getting autoimmune issues or you're getting cancer, I would go as far to say you probably haven't managed that charcoal filter very well in your life, and you've just absorbed so much energy, like negative energy. and your body's just metastasizing that. Now, with HSPs, it's common that you'll get overstimulated if you're not careful. You have strong empathy. You're a very deep thinker. And sometimes that can obviously work against you. You can almost become sort of OCD if you're not careful. You have a high level of, obviously, awareness. Sometimes it's one of those things where it is a double-edged sword. You've got to know when enough is enough. You've got to know, okay, I've done enough thinking at this point. I think a lot of people, they think too much. There's too much procrastination. There's too much logic-driven number crunching involved. And there's a level of just faith and intuition and trusting yourself to figure things out that is mandatory when it comes to entrepreneurship. If you're a professional, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have any aspirations for your life where you want to achieve something beautiful, you've got to get out of your damn way. Most people think way too much. They procrastinate way too much. The mental bandwidth people dedicate to making even small decisions, that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. The way I've had to learn how to think is I've had to learn to recognize that almost everything worth achieving in my life is going to require me just leaping and not having all the information right away, but having the faith in the ability that I can build the bridge as I cross it. You can build the bridge as you cross it, but until you start walking to cross that bridge, it's never going to happen. And it's just going to continue to be this pipe dream, this thing you think about, this thing you ruminate over. And if unmanaged, all these things, with HSPs, it's going to turn into anxiety or an anxiety disorder, burnout. If you burn out a lot, this is your classic HSP. Overwhelm, like if you sense that you're just getting overloaded and it's just making you like shut down in general where you're not even implementing basic stuff. That overwhelm is just like the mental RAM is just tapped out. And then at that point, it can drive a lot of emotional instability. But if mastered, you are going to be a weapon when it comes to intuition. You're like a clairvoyant. Creativity. Typically, people that are in a flow state with HSP are very creative. They're often like right brain creatives, musicians, artists. I would say in many ways, even though a lot of what I do as a high-level nutrition specialist is science-based sort of scientific health stuff. Many of you guys who work with me know there's a real intuitive, creative component to the way that I navigate stuff. I definitely have that creative, intuitive aspect because I would say that science tells us a little bit about human health, but I've often found what's missing is that intuitive, sort of innate knowing. That intuitive, innate knowing. And that's why I also find a lot of medical professionals, a lot of doctors who are very left-brained, they're not even in very good health. Like you look at a lot of doctors, they're not even in shape because they're missing all that other part of the equation. They have some of the data, but they don't have that sort of intelligent intuition, that creativity that taps them into like creative problem solving and thinking outside the box. And then obviously what you'll find with HSPs is you have a higher level of potential emotional intelligence if you master it in yourself, and it allows you to be a very good leader. You can be a very powerful leader. You can move people to action. So when you're thinking about mastering this, if you want to be a really effective leader and you want to have very powerful, positive persuasion over people in a good way and use it for good reasons, this all ties into it. Now, the first thing that I've noticed when it comes to HSPs is that you have a sensitive nervous system. So think of your nervous system like it's like the operating system of your physical body, And there's a few different aspects to your nervous system. I'm not going to go too much into the science of it, but you've got your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest side, and you've got your sympathetic nervous system, which is your flight or fight side. Each side has a function. Each side has a role, right? And your body essentially toggles between the two depending on the activities you're doing. When you're working out, for example, you're more sympathetic dominant. When you are digesting food or you're about to sleep, you're more parasympathetic dominant. Now, one of the things that you'll often find is that people that are HSP tend to get more stuck in like fight or flight response. So that's also why they tend to have digestive issues. Because if your digestion is activated and turns on when your parasympathetic nervous system is turned on, that means whenever that system is suppressed, your digestion is going to be downregulated. So one of the things that I focus on first when it comes to health in general and understanding how to navigate this is you've got to be mindful about your digestion. You've got to be mindful about your digestion. You need to be mindful about your sleep-wake cycles. I would say that for me, my sleep-wake cycle, and when I say sleep-wake cycle, I'm talking about the time that I go to bed and the time that I get up every day. It is absolutely robotically consistent. Every day, it's pretty much the same. And I will tell you that I find for people that are HSP, if they don't get a very good, locked-in, consistent routine with their sleep, it magnifies all the negative HSP traits. So you'll typically notice your digestion gets worse. You'll typically notice you might get sort of skin irritations more susceptibly. You will notice you're probably more prone to OCD and overthinking. And you will typically not recover very well from workouts. So you might almost feel like you're prone to injuries. If you have a lot of injuries, a lot of repetitive strain injuries, a lot of inflammation in general, you feel like your body's kind of inflamed. Some people who are beginners, they won't be able to register this right away. But for some of you, you might be aware of your body being inflamed. Like you're holding water retention, you're more puffy than normal, you feel achy. Those things are signs that your nervous system is straining and it's not recovering from the stimulus. So from pushing yourself in your business, pushing yourself in life, working out, just living basically. So the first thing I want to touch on quickly is digestion. And then I want to touch on a few other key systems. And I'm just going to kind of throw things in as I go because this topic is so all-encompassing that I'm sure there'll be things that I miss in this, but I'm going to do my best to cover as much as I can. So I would tell you that your gut's typically pretty sensitive, that you need to make sure that you're eating whole foods as much as possible. I always say foods with one ingredient. You know, brown rice is just brown rice, sweet potato is just sweet potato. You're more sensitive to junk food, period. So like if you see Johnny down the road eating pizza and donuts, you will have a far more adverse response than he will. It's not to say that he's going to be fine. Like he'll still get a negative effect too. But you will have a lot more of an inflammatory response. You typically will notice more digestive issues and you'll feel even more brain fog. You'll feel worse. And so I find for me, for example, it's imperative that you either use healthy food upgrades, so finding healthy alternatives for things that are like vices to you, or you just want to get to a place where you have enough discipline where you don't have them at all. I'm at the point in my journey now where I've had so many issues over the years that the idea of having some junk food or having even a healthy food upgrade that's not really that good for me, the negative effects I get from that are so unappealing that I'm able to future pace how I want to feel. And I imagine going through those effects. I imagine the digestive issues. I imagine the brain fog. And I'm like, heck no. Heck no. I don't want that at all. Like, I want to achieve so much in my life, and I want to produce at the highest level, and I want to grow this movement with you, and I want to be the best nutritional consultant there is. And that's going to require me operating way differently than most people. And that's why I do this. So the first thing is to recognize healthy food upgrades and really focusing on the quality of like a whole food diet. That's the first thing. Another thing is very often you might have a sensitivity to a lot of fiber or fermented foods. So people will say that, adding more fiber to your diet, your rainbow, I talk about the rainbow veg, for example. While that's healthy, if you're a highly sensitive person and you add massive volumes of cold slaw and like raw greens and a lot of raw rainbow veg, that can really bloat you if you're not locked in and got your nervous system all dialed in and calm, and you're not moving a lot to kind of pump the motility of your digestive system, and you haven't optimized your gut health. So what I would tell you is you need to focus more on Instapot and Crock-Pot rainbow veg first, like slow cooked. I would get some of the canned Amy's soups and stews as a base. Things that are easier on digestion to start with. I would also microdose fermented foods, if at all, at first. So rather than adding massive amounts of sauerkraut or kimchi or kombucha, little bits, little microdoses of that stuff first. Alongside that, I'd be doing something like glutamine powder, a good quality digestive enzyme, betaine, HCl, and pepsin, which helps with stomach acid concentrations, and then seed symbiotic, which helps repopulate your gut with a good symbiotic. I've done whole episodes on digestive health. So go through all my episodes and just tune in and absorb, because again, digestion is a whole topic in and of itself. Now, the reason why the gut matters is because there's something called the gut-brain axis via the vagus nerve. There's this two-way channel, and when you have inflammation in your gut, it will be driving an inflammatory response in your brain and vice versa. People often say, is it chicken or the egg thing? Like, what causes what? Does your mental stuff cause the negative gut health, or does the negative gut health cause the mental stuff? It's both. It's both. So typically what I tell people is that when I'm about to eat, I do not eat in a super stressed state. So if you're stressed, just fast. Before you eat, sit down and breathe for 1 or 2 minutes. Slow, calm, nasal breathing. Don't eat in a manic, panic state. Don't rush it. Don't rush eat. See, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, they're prone to rush eating. Oh, I've only got 10 minutes. And so they just pile drive their food in. Not good. Do not do that. Slow it down. Nasal breathing for 1 or 2 minutes, and then take your time and chew your food well. Get off your phone if you're scrolling and you're watching like stressful, inflammatory stuff. You've got to have that time where you're just present and chill out. Often I'll sit at the dinner table with my family and we'll just have a conversation of like, hey, what was your favorite thing today? We'll ask our daughter that. What was your favorite thing today? And we literally just talk about that, and I just slow nasal breathe. Because I've noticed that you can get digestive issues and you might think that it's some mechanical issue. You might think, oh man, is it a food sensitivity? Do I need to change the supplements? And yeah, sometimes it is those things. But sometimes you're eating in a super stressed state and your parasympathetic nervous system is not turned on. So I would say food sensitivity testing can be useful because there will almost certainly be sensitivities that you have and that will be affecting your gut and then obviously downstream affecting your brain. I would also say slow down the way you eat, control nasal breathing before you eat, opting for slow cooked foods that are already partially broken down rather than a lot of raw stuff, until you run a gut rehab protocol and work on and heal that gut, and then introduce more raw stuff in, alongside introducing and microdosing in fermented foods as well. So I would tell you that the gut component is really, really important. That's where I would be focusing right away. Because there's mechanical things, there's tactical things you can do. It's not just a matter of trying to think differently. You can literally add in some supplements. You can change the cooking method. You can do the nasal breathing before your meals. So you can do these mechanical things. Another thing that I think is really, really important is movement and light exposure. I combine these two because they kind of come hand in hand. I cannot tell you how important this one is. If someone was going to say to me, give me a hierarchy, I would say sleep's first and then this one. Sleep's first and then this one. And I've found that a lot of people that have these issues, that have like a low mood, or they got ADHD, or they can't concentrate well, or they get sick often, you sit on your ass too much. And you know it. You're too sedentary. And you come up with reasons why you can justify being too sedentary. Just realize that if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. So if you want to argue in favor of, hey, I have to sit down for this thing, knock yourself out, buddy. Knock yourself out. You're just going to have to deal with the consequence of that, because you can't just keep throwing supplements and peptides and biohacks at a problem that is a lifestyle problem, period. And so the first thing that I'll say is that you might be able to hear in the background here, I'm actually on my walking pad right now. You have to move often. I found that, think of being an HSP like having a lot of mental kinetic energy. And if you don't move to sort of moderate that energy metabolism, it starts to leak, and you'll often find that you either get a lot of like brain fog or a lot of like inability to focus, or you get anxious, or all of the above. So you're just not, your brain's just not firing well. It's not clean. You feel scattered. You don't feel good. I've seen this firsthand. So for example, recently, my wife Lauren, her grandmother passed away, and we drove down from Tennessee, where we are now, down to Louisiana to see her family. And I noticed how much my physiology downregulated when I was driving our vehicle for like 6 hours each day for 2 days. It was pronounced. I noticed my digestion was affected. I noticed that my mood and my energy, sort of my mental state, was definitely de-optimized. Now, it doesn't mean that it's terrible, but I'm used to performing at such a high level. I notice these things, and I don't like it. And I've come to really value what it feels like to perform at the highest level. It's such a good feeling when mentally you are locked in all day long. You don't have the energy dips that people talk about. You don't need to take the naps. I used to be that way. I used to have to take a nap every day around like 1 p.m. Every day. It was mandatory. I used to get sick all the time. I would get sick almost every week, some type of cold, flu, something. So between getting sick all the time and between having to take naps all the time, like that is such a detriment to you wanting to achieve a high level in your life. It's like you're a drag car going down the drag strip, but the parachute's half ejected the whole time. Your foot can be to the floor. But if your parachute's half ejected, it's going to cause so much wind resistance, you're going to go half as fast as someone who's locked in. So you've got to remember, like, this stuff matters. So movement, I will tell you, I'm just going to tell you what I do, and you can do as much of it as you think you can. I walk, so I get up in the morning at about 2:30 a.m. The first part of the morning is like my quiet time where I just learn and I just enjoy that quiet, calm space. I watch YouTube. I enjoy it. I watch some fun videos. I watch some personal development videos. I watch all kinds of random stuff. I'll sip on my coffee. I'll sometimes have a protein bar. It's just my quiet time in the morning from about 2:30 through to 4:30. So I have 2 hours where I'm just kind of being me, chilling. I love that time. That time's very, very precious to me. By 4:30, I come out to my superhuman gym and I start walking on my walking pad. I start to get into my workflow, and I drop my morning mindset messages into my mastermind group, which, by the way, they all really, really enjoy and love that. If you're not in my Anomaly Project 6-week course, get in that as we come into 2026 in spring. It's going to be a really good foundational place for you to begin, or get into my Business Athlete Council. These are all the strategies and tools I talk about in a very simplified, simplistic way. It will help you tremendously. Information's one part of the equation, but the application and the environment is so important, and that's the part people overlook. So don't be like most people and overlook that and just think you've got the information. It's not the whole equation. So get in the rotation with me. Reach out if you want to do that. But I start walking at 4:30, and I'll do my morning mindset messages. I'll check in with a few students. I start to write a couple of posts on social media. And I walk from about 4:30 through to 6 a.m. So right at 6 a.m., I go inside, and that's when I start to go into like dad mode. So at dad mode, I empty the dishwasher, I change the cat litter, I get the trash out, I get Zia breakfast ready, I get all that stuff done, right? So I'm on my feet from 4:30 onwards. I go into the bathroom, I get ready, I get myself looking presentable for the day, and then at that point, guys, I will literally be low-grade walking all day till dinner time. All day. And my energy is 10 times higher than most people. You don't lose energy when you walk more. You gain energy. You're like a human power plant. You're like a human windmill. When those turbines move, it generates energy. In fact, you're like a combination of a turbine, a windmill, and a solar panel. So when you move and those turbines spin and you get light exposure in the sun, you're getting two separate energy bursts. And I promise you, the combination of those two things is powerful. And so what I will do is I'll have periods where I'm at my standing desk with my walking pad, and I'll be getting work done on my computer. And then every hour for about 5 minutes, I'll go walk outside around our block. It's a little quarter mile. I'll often take my shirt off, so I'm getting sun on my skin. And I will send voice messages. I'll leverage AI on my phone. So I have these different chat threads on my phone. I'll dictate an email into them. It'll clean it up and turn it into an email for me, and I send that off. So I'm literally producing and creating and getting work done and coaching done while I'm walking outside in the sun. This is how a business athlete operates. It's gone are the days where you're sitting in a damn cubicle that's sterilized full of white light, and that's all you're doing. That's the old school way of doing things. And look at the health of those people. You do not want or need that. And so outside of those little bursts of walking that I do, I'll come back. I'll either jump on my air bike for a few minutes if I'm going to get on a call with someone. So very often when I'm talking to someone on a call, I'll be on my air bike, just riding. If I need to come over to my desk for whatever reason, I just jump off that, I come straight over. So what I'm telling you is you have to engineer your environment to be conducive to enhance movement. I would tell any high performer the best thing you can do with your home office setup or an office setup is have a Peloton or an air bike and have a walking pad and a standing desk. And then take little trips outside, walk around the car park, walk outside multiple times per day. So I'm walking all day. And I've found that by getting that movement in, and it's probably about 20,000 steps a day, it's really powerful for fat loss. The fat loss is pronounced. So it's easy for me to be 6 or 7% body fat. It's easy at this point. It will be easier for you, for your fat loss, if you lean into this concept. So walking pads, standing desk, Peloton bikes, that type of thing. Now, every hour, I get out for a couple of minutes and get in the sun. I would tell you, as much as possible, do the same. There's something about that natural light, that sunlight, that really helps your mitochondrial health, your metabolism, your brain chemistry. Now, I'm not just talking about you sitting inside by a window in the sun. It's not the same thing. There are UV filtering, UV filtration layers in typical conventional house windows that filters out a lot of the near infrared rays that are critical for mitochondrial health. So yeah, you feel the sun, you can see it, but it's not the same. So you want to be leveraging light and movement as much through the day as you can. Take those team meetings, go for a walk. I've said that to a number of my one-on-one students. Hey, rather than sitting in an office room with a couple of your managers, go take a walk together. Wear one of the AI necklaces that records and just record the meeting, and it will put the AI notes together for you at the end of the walk. Hands down, much more strategic. You'll be more creative. The creativity increases when you walk. That's science too. That's been observed in the data. because it enhances blood flow and oxygen transportation through the brain. So definitely movement. And the other thing that I do is you must train every day or sweat every day in some capacity. So I lift weights every day, but I don't do big, long, hard workouts. I do smaller ones, but it's like a daily practice. Now, I will say the context matters. So if you're a woman and you're going through menopause, it's probably not a good idea to lift weights every day. You might want to do it every second day, but you want to sweat every day. So think about this. Every day, maybe every second day, you're lifting weights, structured, intentional resistance training. The days between, go outside and throw on a weighted vest and go for a little ruck, or do a little bit of yoga or a little bit of Pilates, something like that. So you're doing something between, but you're moving your body. And I would even tell you it's better to do it outside in the light and in the sun. That's going to be the best case scenario. But you have to train every day. If you don't hit at least 12 to 15,000 steps and you're not getting sunlight for more than 5 minutes, and you're not moving and exercising or expending some energy to sweat every day, that's part of your issue. That will have a negative effect on your nervous system. Now, equally, you've got to be careful though, because I find with people that are HSP, they can overdo it. So that's why, for example, 75 hard is a common challenge that people do. HSPs can overtrain with that stuff. Like if you're getting a lot of injuries, you're probably doing too much volume, too much junk volume, too much fluff. So you need to strip it back some. I've done whole episodes on training. I do 2 good working sets per exercise, for example. Many people do 5 or 6. It's too much. It's too much volume. It's too much stress on your nervous system. You've got to be more intentional and focus on quality work, not just volume, junk volume and quantity. Outside of just the natural light exposure, be mindful of your interior lighting. So again, like I mentioned at the start, the lighting is a big part of this. So I find that a lot of bright interior lighting almost stresses the nervous system out more, and it will have an effect on sleep. So I put blue light filters on my computer, blue light filters on my phone. I use a lot of Himalayan salt lamps and essential oil diffusers that you can set to different colors. So a lot of them will be set to like an orange or a yellow color. So I'll use a lot of those to set those colors. I'll use a lot of Himalayan salt lamps. And that way, it's a lot of warm sunrise/sunset type tones. I find that quite calming on the nervous system. At nighttime, for example, which kind of ties into the next part of this, which is sleep. Sleep is really a key non-negotiable. If you're staying up late or you're random with your sleep, it's more than likely presenting itself in your health as massive digestive issues, autoimmune issues, cancers, or some other issue. And sometimes it can be seen in your blood work. So you've got to be very, very intentional with your sleep. And part of it is like, you got to get habitual. You know, some people will say, but I just don't feel tired at 9 o'clock. I would say part of that is you're waking up too late and you're not expending enough energy through the day. If you expend more energy by walking more and you train more consistently and you get up earlier and do all of those things consistently, you will naturally want to sleep earlier. But it might take a few days. But you have to give yourself that time under the belt. So I will be telling you, I've done whole episodes on sleep, so I would go listen to those. But all this to say, in terms of a summary, I find that the lighting part is really important. So using those warm tones, turning down in harsh interior lights, using black modes or dark modes on your computer and phone rather than light modes. I find putting on calming auditory stimulus. So don't listen to like hard music or loud noises. Put on some relaxing spa music on Spotify, for example, and just let that play in the background. We'll play relaxing little nursery rhymes for the kids. It's just relaxing stuff. I find diffusing essential oils that are calming on the nervous system. Lavender, stress away, things like that. So lavender is a good one. And I find the combination of addressing the sense of smell, addressing the visual cortex with the lighting, addressing the auditory cortex, the hearing with the spa music, and then addressing the tactile component, which is turning the air temperature down to like 65. I find those combinations of things really, really help you bring down that nervous system arousal to get into a better state to sleep. One other component that I would suggest is you've got to make sure you eat early enough. If you're eating too late in the day, the food, the digestive function will have an effect on your sleep. Because if your body's breaking down a bunch of food, you'll either get reflux or your body temperature is going to be elevated while the food's breaking down, and you won't sleep as well. So very often you need to be very habitual with the times that you eat. If you're just flying by the seat of your pants, eating randomly, that's part of why your sleep's not great. Can you see how everything is interconnected? And remember, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. So you can come up with all kinds of justifications and reasons why this stuff's happening. And I just say, well, stay the same then. Stay the same. Or you can say, you know what? Like, I've got to start becoming more intentional. I've got to start locking this stuff in. I want a better result. I deserve a better result. I want a better result. I'm going to make it happen. So eat your meals earlier if you have to. So the sleep part is massive. Like I mentioned, I've done a whole episode on that, but I would say that a regular, consistent sleep-wake cycle 7 days a week is going to be the thing that drives pretty much every other response your body feels. It will have an effect on your digestion. It will have an effect on your energy levels. It will have an effect on your mood, your cravings. And so all of that stuff really does tie into how you feel long-term. I would even say the quality of, talking about software, the quality of your food. So I touched on earlier in the conversation about how junk food can really play a role in this. And I will say that most people that are HSP, they don't realize how much their diet plays into this. They might do a lot of journaling, they might do a lot of meditation, they might do a lot of mindfulness techniques, but they don't always have that really clean, pure, locked-in diet. And sometimes the diet is good, but like I said, it might not be ideal for you based on where your gut's at. Like if you eat a whole lot of whole foods and very clean, but you're eating a lot of raw, fibrous veg and a lot of fermented foods, that can often actually work against you to start with. So you've got to really learn to enhance that gut before you introduce a lot of those things in. But I would say general rules of thumb with diet is 95+% foods with one ingredient. You know, blueberries are just blueberries, brown rice is just brown rice, sweet potato is just sweet potato, you get the point. With the average person, you could probably do 80 to 85%. I would say for an HSP, you've got to go like 90 to 95%. You've got to keep it very, very clean. And I would even say sometimes you've got to be mindful of like the protein bars and the protein powders you're consuming, because sometimes those things can negatively impact your gut, and that can kind of throw off the whole system. So sometimes you've got to go for just like straight up whole foods, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's different for everyone. But I would also say focus on nutrient diversity and colors. So even if it's slow cooked, where's your green, where's your red, where's your orange? Rotate through different types of proteins, rotate through different types of starchy carbohydrates, rotate through different types of fibrous veg. Episode 11 of my show talks all about the macro bowl concept. So if you want to kind of lock that in, go listen to episode 11. But I will tell you that between whole foods, foods with one ingredient, nutrient diversity, and eating the rainbow, a lot of superfood type stuff, that is going to be the foundation of your diet in many ways. I find that people can fall on two ends of the spectrum, where if your digestion's quite sensitive, you might find that you have to eat smaller, more frequent meals, which is fine. You may find that sometimes if you eat too much, it gives you more brain fog and you get tired after you eat. So you may find that you have to eat a little bit less and have slightly larger meals, which is my case. I have less meals, larger, and I backload my meals towards the end of the day when my brain function and performance isn't as important. And at that point, if anything, it almost helps me sleep. So I say all this because you got to remember, it's not just the types of foods you're eating. It's not even just the calories, the protein, carbs, and fats. It's the timing. It's the timing and the frequency. All of these things kind of come into play. Now, if you feel overwhelmed with that thought, that's why getting into my business athlete council or getting some one-on-one coaching would be a good idea, because I can help you simplify this down and give you very simple direction. I can say, based off your blood work, based off your physiology and your biofeedback responses, I would start with ABC. Done. You don't even have to guess. You don't have to try and WebMD it or go to YouTube University or try to grok it in ChatGPT. If information, and I'm going to say this again, if information was all it took, then everyone should be jacked millionaires because you have access to AI. But because most people are not jacked millionaires, what does it tell you? It tells you that information is one part of the equation, but there's more that's missing. And it's often the mentorship, the wisdom, the intuition, the connection that comes with someone who has this real world experience in the trenches figuring this stuff out, like myself. So when it comes to diet, just remember all of those things that I mentioned. You've got to keep it cleaner. You've got to focus on healthy food upgrades. You've got to stick with foods with one ingredient. You've got to focus on nutrient diversity. And I would say prioritizing protein, getting some good healthy fats in the equation. I typically opt for more root vegetables as my carbohydrates. So Japanese sweet potato, gold potato, red potato, that type of stuff with slightly less grains, but you can do some grains too, jasmine rice, basmati rice. And then your rainbow veg, whether it's slow cooked or raw, depending on your gut. I do a lot of microgreens. I do a lot of pickled beets for the oxygen transportation and vasodilation and blood flow. Grated carrot. And then obviously strategic use of things like sauerkraut or kimchi as a fermented food in the equation too. And even sometimes an adaptogen like lion's mane mushroom or shiitake or maitake for the brain benefits. So this is important stuff to note. But just remember that even if your diet's really clean and you're doing all the broccoli sprouts in the world and you're perfect with that stuff, if you are not pulling the other levers, like if you're not getting out and moving enough, if you're not getting enough light exposure, if you're not slowing down to breathe before meals, if you're not training every day in some capacity, or your sleep's really sporadic, the diet can be really clean, but you still won't transfer over to the optimal results that you want. You'll often still notice a lot of negative biofeedback responses, and you might even just sort of have more of a skinny fat physique. Just because your body's inflamed and the way that the partitioning ratios are just suboptimal. So all of these things will tie together. But the thing I want you to kind of focus on is that as you start to prioritize all of these systems, you can become a total weapon. I mean, your ability to achieve a higher level result than the average person is monumental. It's monumental. And just remember, all the things I'm sharing with you here ties into how you would want to try to support and approach your kids too. So with the quality of the diet especially, healthy food upgrades, exercise. We have a gymnastics bar in our house that Zia, my daughter, will swing off. So she moves a lot through the day for that reason. I take her outside and kick the soccer ball around for her every day so she gets some sunlight outside. We walk as a family. We do that with intention because we know that, okay, if these principles work for us as adults, we have to start to instill them into our kids from an early age to make this behavior normal. You've got to make it normal. Otherwise, they're going to grow up, they're going to eat junk food, they're going to get fat as teenagers. And honestly, like the hard thing to stomach and swallow is in many ways, if you have young kids and they aren't healthy, that's your fault. And it takes courage and awareness to accept and own that. At a certain point, it becomes the person's choice. But early on, you have a responsibility and a duty to do your best to educate them and give them better coping mechanisms and tools and skills, like the gymnastics bar in the house, right? Like healthy food upgrades so they're not eating a bunch of junk food, and help them and work out. We have a home gym set up, so Zia sees us training, she'll want to work out sometimes. We'll give her a little lightweight. It's nothing serious. But I think like showing your family how to do this, not just telling them, is so important. It's so important. Another thing that I would say can be useful, and this is more tactical, and it's not essential, is do the Braverman test a couple of times a year. So the Braverman test will give you an approximation of your brain chemistry. Sometimes it is a chemical challenge that you can troubleshoot. So say, for instance, you do the Braverman test, and that's an approximation of your brain chemistry. It's like a ballpark estimate. It asks you a bunch of questions, and based off your subjective responses, it estimates the different levels of chemistry in your brain: dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA. I find a lot of people that are HSPs tend to be GABA deficient and acetylcholine dominant, meaning they tend to have almost too much acetylcholine, which is like the accelerator of the brain, and they don't have enough braking system, which is the GABA. And so I use supplements like theanine serene, for example, at nighttime with my dinner meal, which has some magnesium, relora, theanine, and GABA in it. And that kind of helps calm down the nervous system. It doesn't sedate you, but it helps you calm down that nervous system stress and arousal. I would say if you're gonna think, okay, with supplementation, what are some things that could be useful? I don't want to go too much into supplementation because I don't want you to think that your answer lies in a pill. But what I would tell you is make sure that you're taking a good quality multivitamin, because you want to fill any micronutrient holes that you might have in your diet. I'd be doing a double dose of a good quality omega-3. I'd be doing a double dose of creatine monohydrate, because creatine is very good for brain health. I would be thinking about things like NAD, like NMN. I'd be thinking about maybe certain peptides, like cerebrolysin, or C-Max and C-Lank, MOTS-C, SS31. So certain peptides. I've done whole episodes on peptides, by the way. I believe episode 4 is one on a range of different peptides. So obviously that's a whole discussion in and of itself. But I would say even those base supplements, amino acids, omega-3s, creatine monohydrate, multivitamin, multi-mineral, so like concentrates mineral drops to your water, I find that's a very good base approach to use. And then even things like Spring Dragon Longevity Tea and Tulsi Tea. Tulsi Tea helps calm down that nervous system. And that's obviously very, very important, right? So when it comes to supplements, again, there's more than that. And I think it is useful to play with things. But I don't want you to think that your answer just lies in that. But that's where I would at least begin. And if you want more information about this stuff, again, get into my coaching rotations, because this is where I would talk about this stuff in a lot more depth, basically. Now, outside of that, I think that your ability to understand how you operate and kind of build out your workflow to make it work. So I'll give you some examples. I find a lot of people who are HSPs, they don't like to talk on the phone a lot. They're not huge phone talking people. So very often if someone's like, oh, can we jump on a call? Part of you cringes inside. You don't really enjoy that stuff. You don't want to do it. Now, it's not to say every single person who's an HSP is like that. Some people don't. But I know for me, I don't like that. And so what I've done is I've engineered my workflow and my life around my psychology, where I'll do a lot of voice messaging. I'll do a lot of voice to text. I do a lot of live streams in my coaching group. I do things where I can provide the contact or the inspiration or the knowledge when and where I'm ready and I'm in that good flow state. Now, I realize not everyone has the ability to do that, but what I'd be saying is, how can you engineer as much of your life with that in mind and be bold enough and have enough courage to make that happen? Make it happen. Or do your best to get close to that. Other things that I find is that I will engineer social interactions where it's like smaller amounts of time. You know, I think it's still good to connect with people, but what I would say is be intentional about your boundaries. Many people that are HSPs, they are people pleasers, and they don't have boundaries. So they'll go out with someone at nighttime, but they don't have a time they're planning on leaving, and they'll stay till midnight. And then they get home and they're totally fried, burned out. Everything falls apart mentally because your sleep's off. So you need to be very intentional with how you do everything. I find generally as an HSP, any social interactions I have will be in the middle of the day. I like the two bookends of my day where I can wind my nervous system up in the morning to get ready for the day and to perform. And then at nighttime, everything's in a calm, peaceful, familiar state where I can get that optimal rest and sleep. Because that's like the linchpin. If that's good, everything else falls into place. So I strategically and intentionally plan things for like the middle of the day. Now, I realize there's always times where it falls outside of that and you have to do something else. And on the odd occasion, that's fine. But I wouldn't be doing that as like a normal part of your process. I would really make sure you try to protect your space and prioritize that and be clear about your boundaries and what you will and will not tolerate, basically. A huge part of this journey for a lot of people is really learning how to communicate boundaries in constructive ways and leading from the front and being bold with how you want to structure your day and not letting other people kind of run the narrative for you. That's a whole other topic in and of itself. I would say go listen to episode 15 of my podcast on burnout, because in that episode I talked quite a lot about that whole concept. But I definitely think that you want to lean into that alone time and those little bits of recovery time. So that's why I take little walks outside. It's why I get up early in the morning and I have that quiet time to myself. Right? Like those little windows of time are where you recharge the system. And you have a lot more stored up potential energy once you recharge that system. So I would definitely be saying to think about how you can communicate more in line with what works with your personality. Can you send more voice to text? Can you send more voice messages? Can you send more written messages and avoid lots of calls if that's an issue for you? Can you plan things in the middle of the day rather than late at night if that's an issue for you? Can you have a nice, consistent, familiar morning and evening routine as part of your anchoring process? Can you go and have little bouts of isolation to recharge your nervous system no matter where you are? Be consistent with your supplementation that you take every single day. Focus on like the quality, clean ingredients and nutrition with your diet. I definitely think that a lot of people struggle with this stuff. I will say also you need to be mindful about curating your social media newsfeed. Remember, you're like an energetic charcoal filter. So if you are just mindlessly scrolling, consuming a lot of inflammatory, stressful stuff on social media, your experience is that social media burns you out, that you feel like you need a break from it. You need a break from it because you're not being intentional with how you're curating your newsfeed. That's why. So I go through and I snooze and unfollow anyone that's posting annoying stuff. I intentionally search out and find things that make me feel calm or enthused. Homesteads, beautiful mountain pictures, like Smoky Mountain photography, homesteads, barndominiums. Like I love sort of architectural stuff and nature stuff. And so I'll search those things in my search bar, and the more I interact with those things, it starts to force more of that into the algorithm for me. So I see a lot more of those things. That's how you build out a good experience with social media. And then being very intentional with going in and just thinking to yourself, how can I add value to people today? How can I comment positively? Do you comment positively and positively interact with people? Because if you don't, that's part of your problem too. One of the power tools that I use, my triple stack, is movement, light, and connection. So often, while I'm walking outside, I will do a quick Instagram story. I'll send a quick video to someone. I'll do a quick live stream in one of my coaching groups. That connection component, I would say for HSPs, is a really powerful part of the process because it gets you out of your head and it gets you into a different state. I notice every time I do my morning mindset messages, every time I do a quick live stream in the coaching group, it elevates me out of the former state I was in. If I'm kind of low, if I'm feeling a bit distracted, I notice how much better I feel when I'm adding value and connecting with other people. And again, you don't have to do it all day. And more so, being an introvert, I like these little bursts of focus where you can go in, you can add value, you can connect, and then you can get back out again and recharge your system. So you got to realize that this way of being, it's not a curse. But if you're getting sick a lot, if you're burning out a lot, if you're not focusing well, it means that you're not habitual enough with your processes. So as a sort of synopsis, as a summary, I would be saying you want to eat at the same times every day. You want to focus on the diet being 95% clean, healthy food upgrades for everything, food sensitivity testing to make sure you're not hitting any food sensitivities. You want to calm down before you eat, breathe, all the things that I mentioned. You want to be walking pretty much all day in some capacity and getting multiple little bursts of walking outside. Do team meetings outside, do calls outside. Try and leverage your time on your phone outside as part of your business if you can. Really, really powerful. Train in some capacity every day. Even if it's not weight training every day, you want to sweat and discharge energy every day in some way, shape, or form. Take a walk with your family every day. Get out, take a walk with them. If you have kids, get a indoor gymnastics spot, get a rebounder. Our daughter will jump on the rebounder. My wife jumps on the rebounder. So Zia will jump on the gymnastics bar and the rebounder. She alternates. She has these little bursts of movement through the day. And she sees us do it, so it's normal to her now. And we're obviously very mindful about her diet, so she's not on a bunch of junk food. We find the healthy food upgrades for her. Got to have that really regular sleep-wake cycle. That, to me, is the foundation layer. And then, obviously, as you work on that, your digestion and all the other things you can play with. You can refine these processes. But I will end with this. You've got to take this aspect of yourself seriously. Like if you come up with reasons why you can't do this or why you shouldn't do it or why it doesn't relate to you, you will burn out periodically in your life and you just won't get that really high level result that you know you're capable of. And some people, quite frankly, that's just going to be the path that they walk. But I can imagine you're listening to this because you're not like that. You are different. You have that high level of ambition. And you are more curious about your psychology. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening 1 hour into this conversation with me. You would have turned it off at the beginning. You wouldn't have even played this in the first place because you don't think anything's wrong. So I say all this because I've found that when I've been able to moderate how I operate in this way and learn how to, when I need to go get that private quiet time to recharge, and how I need to structure my sleep-wake cycles, and how I'll duck off to the hotel room for lunch when everyone else is having lunch downstairs socializing. I'll remove myself in situations like that to charge back up so I'm even more social after lunch. That's the trade-off to me that's worth it. I want to do those things because it makes me a better version of myself when it matters most. So just recognize that often anxiety issues, ADHD, a lot of the issues that people have, it comes from you being an HSP and not understanding how to navigate your energy in this crazy world that does not really respect or appreciate boundaries or understand energy from a sort of consciousness standpoint. A lot of typical business people are like bulldozers. They're very unemotionally intelligent. They're on the phone all day. They sit on their ass all day. They're very loud. They want things done at the drop of a hat. You have to learn how to establish boundaries with people where they don't steamroll you with that behavior. And that's a journey that you have to be on and you have to figure out. I've got very good at it at this point, but it's come through a lot of suffering and pain of not doing that. So I would not do that, and then I would suffer the consequence of feeling really burned out and resentful after the fact because I didn't do it. So communicate. And just remember that however you feel right now, you have a lot more upside potential in you. You're like a high-performance race engine. And you can still be durable. But you got to think about these principles that I shared today. And if your children are like this, it's a gift. Tell them and remind them of that. Do not make them feel like this is a curse for that. The sensory stuff, like once you learn, okay, these are the clothes that I'm going to rinse and repeat, you end up getting stuff done even faster because you're just totally locked in. You're locked in with your meal timings. You're locked in with your diet. Everything is established. And sure, there'll be times where curveballs happen and things change, but it doesn't have to be the norm. That's the exception to the rule, and that's okay. And you'll learn to navigate those things too. You'll learn to cope through those things too. So go out there today and recognize that I would say for you, your next level is going to be really locking in these principles, locking in these pillars. You'll get sick less, you'll perform at a higher level, you'll have less brain fog, you'll think sharper, you won't need to take naps all the time. You'll look better as a byproduct. You'll be in better shape. And you'll be better for your family. And you'll be better for your team. And that to me is exactly what it means to be a business athlete.